Well, I might be, but I can't see myself. Come on.
If you wave by your sewing machine, they probably know you're alive.
Hello. Oh, there we are. Hiya. Hi, Luke. Hi, Bonnie. New York. My goodness, you're having a bad time of it. Please stay safe. Right. Well, on Saturday we had a look at embroidering on paper, stitching on paper, attaching pockets and sewing on acetate and all sorts of things that we could think of that might be helpful to learn to sew in your junk journal if that was what you wanted to do. So today we're kind of kicking it up another little notch and we're looking at free motion embroidery. It's the more arty cousin, let's say, of I'm just reading what people are saying. Good morning, y'all. Hi, Debbie. Yeah, I think it's the more arty sort of cousin of the ordinary sewing. You can put a lot more of yourself into this, whereas sewing around things, yeah, I know there's different ways of doing it, but this can be very precise. If you're one of those people, and I must say I do fall into that camp, of being really neat and really tidy, then you've kind of got to suspend that for a little while, I think, when you're doing this, or to get the best out of this anyway. I've done some little examples to show you what I mean, this sort of thing. Let's see what else I've done. This one here. Let's see where I can put that. I thought it wasn't. Yeah, this one. These are just bits of felt that I've appliqued on, which is another thing that we can do. This one that I've just put 2 rectangles of fabric on, and then I've just sewn a flower over the top. And I quite like that one, actually. I think something along these lines would look lovely for a journal cover. And then, just because I was getting a bit silly, I did this one, which, as you can see, is a lady, and she's entirely machine embroidered. So that was kind of a test to myself, really, because I haven't done this for quite a long time, so I was a bit out of step with it. So anyway, those are some examples. But there's some things that we need to change on our machine before we can do this. With the straight stitch, you just, you're selecting with the knob that we talked about on Saturday, and everything's just fine. With machine embroidery, you need to change your foot. Now, this was the foot that we had on Saturday, just a straightforward foot. Nothing, it's probably the one that came on your machine, I would have guessed. But for free machine embroidery, we need a different sort of foot. And they come in different, they look kind of different, really. This is one here. I've never used that one. Don't know what it's like. This one that's spring-loaded, that's quite a common one to use. It's got an oval on the end. And the one I've got on the machine that's actually a circle, a metal circle. You can get ones that are open as well, and they're quite helpful in as much as you can see where you're going a bit more, but I didn't have one of those to hand, so I've got the hoop, metal hoop on. The other thing is that I would recommend that for your bobbin underneath, you use some sort of bobbin fill, not ordinary thread, something that's a bit thinner. This is Coats Invisible, and it is invisible. It's a very, very fine filament. Don't be fooled into thinking that all invisible thread is the same. Some of it is like catgut. It's like you'd make fishing lures out of, and that's not what we want. It's too thick and not pliable enough. This it's 100% polyamide, Coats Invisible, and it's doing the job really well. The other thing that I would say is don't forget that it is plastic. Don't iron it, because it'll just disintegrate. So fill your bobbin with that. It's much thinner than thread, so one bobbin fill will last a lot longer than your ordinary thread. You can get various other bobbin fills. This one is a Silco one, and it's white. It's a bit thicker than the invisible, but thinner than thread. And this one as well is another Wonderfill one. I didn't like these so much, I must be honest. I like the Coats invisible one. Right, so that's kind of discussed the foot and the bobbin thread. The top thread, you can use pretty much anything, but be prepared to move your tension. I know nobody likes moving their tension, because you think, oh, I'll never get it back to where it was and it was perfect. If you're worried about that, put a little mark on your tension disc so you can always come back to it. But for different threads, for machine embroidery, you will have to move your tension. Generally slacken it right off, actually. I've got this one down to 2.5, whereas normally I'd sew at 5.5, so it's much slacker. Right, the next thing to say is that for this machine, which is quite an old machine now, I'm guessing it's at least 20 years old, but it does the job perfectly. These things here, these sort of metal saw edge looking things, these are teeth, and their proper name is feed dogs. And what they do generally when you're sewing ordinarily is they come up and down and they make your fabric, they walk your fabric like that underneath your needle. That's why you don't need pullet at the back, because these feed dogs will do, that's the job. That's what they're intended to do. But for free motion embroidery, where we want to go to the side and we want to go backwards and forwards, these are going to be a hindrance, because they're going to try and take us that way all the time, which is not where we want to go. Now, a lot of machines have the ability, there's a little switch on the front or on the back, or down beside where the bobbin is, that you can just knock it to one side and the feed dogs will drop out. Not drop out, don't worry, just flick it back and they come up, but drop it from this base plate. I haven't got that facility on this machine, so there is a way around it, and it's a perfectly good way around it. Just take a piece of masking tape, why does it always want to do this when you're on camera? So I'm just going to cut that end bit off, because I've now wrinkled it all up. So it's just a piece that's going to cover those feed dogs. So that sort of size. And then slot it in under your foot, over your feed dogs, and stick it down as best you can, because if any of it's sticking up, the fabric's going to get caught on it, and it'll just be a pest, a nuisance. So firm it down quite well as you can. So that's that. Right then, the other thing about machine embroidery is that it's all about the speed that you make it go at, i.e. how hard you press the pedal, and you are in charge of moving it. So you can move it very, very slowly, or you can move it quite quickly if you're feeling a bit fancy with yourself. The tendency, I think, when people start off with this is that they want to go slowly because they don't feel in control of it. And actually, it's a bit like when you were learning to drive. If you remember, you want to go at 10 miles an hour and you keep twitching the wheel every couple of seconds because it doesn't feel straight. And it's not a good way to drive. Once you get a bit more confidence and you go in at 30, 40 miles an hour, you can just move the wheel and you don't have to keep twitching it madly. And it's a bit like this, actually. So the first thing to do is we've now put the masking tape over the feed dog, so we've actually trapped our bobbin thread in there. So take your top thread just once down through there, give it a pull, and your bobbin thread should come up. I had a pin Saturday for this purpose, but I haven't got it today. the problem with invisible thread, you can't see it. It is there, however. It is there. I think we're all right there. Time will tell when we start sewing. Right, so I think it's easier when you first start. If you start on fabric, paper can come after. Let's make a start on fabric. And I'm using patchwork cotton fabric, that sort of weight. It's very forgiving, should I say. So I'm just going to cut a little bit of that out. And I'm going to make a sandwich with, actually what I'm going to use is this. It's curtain interlining. It's a bit like felt. It's got the same sort of feel as felt has, but it just makes it easier for the machine if you're quilting. Let's start off quilting first, and it's also the best thing to do if you're going to make a journal cover, because you want something with a bit of substance to it. So I'm just going to cut these bits off, make myself a sandwich like that. So I've got cotton fabric on the front, cotton fabric on the back, and this cotton interlining in between. It's polyester interlining actually in between. If you haven't got any interlining, you can use wadding. This is very thick wadding actually. It's about as thick as it comes, and it makes it awkward to sew. So I wouldn't advise that you use this thickness, but you can get this cheap polyester wadding pretty much anywhere, and go for one of the thinner ones. This is the thick one. It's nice, but I'd wait until you're a bit more experienced before you tackle that. So if you haven't got any of those things and you can't get out to get them, try a bit of felt. A bit of felt in there will do fine. So I haven't got my light on my machine today because it was glary for the cameras. So I think it's light enough for you. So hold on to your top thread, drop your feed dogs. You must always drop your feed dogs. And for this, I'm just choosing a mid-length straight stitch. You can do zigzag on it, but let's just see if we can get the hang of the zigzag straight stitch first. So I've put my needle down in, I'm hanging on to this thread. I'm also hanging on to the fabric, this side and this side, and I'm pulling it quite taut. I'm not pulling it really, really tight. I'm just pulling it quite taut. So off we go. Now that's quite a slow speed, and I'm not moving it very quickly. And so you tend to get these sort of jaggy, this sort of jaggy look to it. I'll just take it out and show you. You get, I don't know.
What are you going for?
Which I was here. You get this corners on it where you might want it to be round, and that's just literally because you're not going fast enough. So we'll try another bit where we just speed it up a little bit. I'm just going to cut these off as I go, or they get tangled up. So make sure that you've dropped your foot. It's so easy to forget to do that actually when you're doing this, but drop your foot. Hold on to your thread if you can and keep a bit of tension on there. So a couple of stitches in place which will anchor this, and as soon as we move away then we can cut that off. So keep your tension on your fabric and try a little bit speed. You don't have to go mad. That's quite a nice speed there. And it's how you move your hands and the speed that you go at. That's will only come with practice. it will only come with practice. So a little bit more speed and I can move my hands a little bit faster. And see, because I didn't snip that off, it gets caught up in things. So let's move down here. And let's see if we can so you need to keep the tension on your fabric. And the sort of classic thing that everybody does, everybody wants to do, is write their name. So when you've learned how to write your name, you're ready to progress. So let's see if I can write mine. You probably need to come back down. So there we are. If you can write your name, you're ready to progress. The other thing that I would say to you is your top thread will snap. It just will. You know, don't get upset about it. It just will snap. It's one of those things, I'm afraid. You just have, you know, you just get used to it. It snaps. Anyway, there's Fiona. I'm sure after I've been doing this for about an hour, I'll be able to do it a bit more accurately. But you can read that. So practice and practice until you can do your name. That's what I would say. And practice on something like this, that's a bit of fabric with something in between to lend you a bit of support. So there you go. And the back is mainly the bobbin fill. So there we are. Let's move on to something more exciting, shall we? Let's see what I've got here. Don't need my samples. I've shown you those. I'll just show these again just in case there was anybody who wasn't in right at the beginning. It's just a little sort of meadow scene, really. I've put bits of felt on and I've appliqued around them. I'll show you how to do that in a second. In fact, I'll show you how to do it now. It's just straightforward felt, and you can cut any shape. It doesn't have to be round, but round's probably the best fun. If you've got any questions, please ask, because I know I'm throwing a lot of information your way. So I'm just going to put that on there. It could be anything on anything. Just imagine, for example, this I think would make a lovely journal cover. You know, you could put some more up here and whatever, or you could write journal on there if you wanted to, on your machine. But let's just see how we went about putting this on here. So hold your thread. I'm going to start in the centre, centre-ish. Some 1, 2, 3, 4. Now that means this is anchored on, so I don't need to hold on to it, but I do need to apply the pressure that I was telling you about on the fabric. I'm just going to cut that end off because otherwise it's going to get tangled up and annoy us. So you just move you are in charge of moving the fabric. You are also in charge of the speed. So try a nice easy speed like this. And this is a good thing to practice on. So there we are. That's appliqued that onto there, and it looks rather nice. Where am I? It's just more arty. It's altogether more arty. When you look at this one as well, it's I don't know what the word is, just more arty. And that was the other one that I was showing people earlier. It's just 2 rectangles of fabric with some stitching on, and then I did that one, which was, well, was just being silly really, I suppose. So let's move on to how we can do it on paper, what we can do, what we can expect it to do. These are just little flowers that I've made. I've just painted these on and then machined around them, which I'll show you how to do. This is metallic thread. Can't really see it on there, the light's bleaching it out, but it's metallic thread. And then if you remember on Saturday we made a little notebook. We put buyer's binding on the top and zigzagged it. Well, I just thought that I'd put that on as a cover for it. And there, can you see it? And I'll show you exactly how I made that, and I'll do it right now. I'll tear this off because we've used that one. I can tear it to the zigzags that we've put on there. And it's just part of a brown paper bag. Nothing more fancy than that. So here's an ordinary brown paper bag. And I'm just going to cut a piece out. It's about the same size as that. You can always cut it after, or glue it down after, or stitch round it after. Entirely up to you. Put these out of the way because you've seen them now. Right. So what I did was I got my Tombow markers out, and I'll do it in fuchsia pink. You should be able to see that nicely. And I just really loosely, and you don't have to be artistic to do this. You know, if you really feel that you can't do this, just copy it out of a child's colouring book, or oh, it's a bit on the large side, or Google an image and just go around the outlines. It, you know, it doesn't have to be brilliant. The idea is that we want it to look kind of arty, but once you've got the hang of it, then you can be very, very precise with this. You can take your time and do slightly better job than me, I think. So we did similar in this home economic class in high school. Yeah, I did. Had to move the fabric in circles. Yeah, the face is amazing. Thanks, Shaz. Thanks for joining. Yeah, that was me just messing around, really. So I just want to sew this onto one of this is the little paper pad that we made. I've torn the front one off, and I'm just going to use the first page. So it would be like a cover. Actually, it needs a bit more than that, doesn't it? It needs a stem. It's time I introduced you to one of my best friends, and it's called Frixion. Let's see if I can get that really in, and you can see it's called Frixion, and it looks like this. Okay, you get them in all sorts of things. You get them in bullet tips, the ones that look like biros, etc. But they have a particular feature, and I'll just demonstrate that to you now. Let's put a stem in here as a guide to where we're going to sew. And let's put a leaf there as well. And a leaf down here. Now this is a rough guide, guys. And it generally always will be a rough guide, you know. But supposing I then think to myself, no, I didn't want that. I'd rather have had another flower. Get your hairdryer or your heat gun or whatever out. And there you go. It's gone, as if by magic. You know, it's a really good thing, I think, particularly for this type of sewing, when you want a bit of a guide, but, you know, you don't want the marks showing afterwards. So let's pop that in again, roughly. As I say, it's rough. Don't think that, you know, oh, I can't draw, so I can't do this. That's just not true. So let's make a start on this then. I just want it on the first sheet, as if I was going to be making a cover for this little notebook. So I'm just going to start in the middle of the flower, hold on to my thread, and then off we go. So try not, if you can, don't follow the pink all the time. You want it. It'll look too prissy. And I know that, you know, 9 times out of 10 that is what we want. But I think for this style of sewing, it's not really what's required. You want it to have more of an arty feel. So once you've done it once and you're all the way round, great. Let's just snip that off while we're here. Let's just go around it again, trying not to be on the edge of the pink and not to sew over the lines that we've already sewn. So let's just give that another try. And each time that you do this, it starts to look just that bit artier. And you can't really go wrong. You know, you're actually setting out to go wrong here. You're setting out not to be on the lines. Right, so we've been round there twice, and I'll show you soon what that looks like. But when we come to the middle, I generally just make a circle. It's up to you how fancy you feel, but I generally just sew a circle. Right, so I'll show you what that looks like. Just cut the end off. So there we are.
You know that because it's out of sync with the
right.
time for some reason.
Okay, so I'm hoping that you can see that. There we are. It's just a pink flower, and it looks good. I like it. I like the way it looks. So let's see if we can do the stem. Similar sort of thing. Now, when you get really good at this, you can draw with your machine. You really can. You can sketch with your machine, and that's, you know, very often what it's called, thread sketching. And that's how I did that face. It's, you know, I'd call that thread sketching. So 1, 2, 3, 4. This is tied off now. I don't need to hold it. Let's go down where we've drawn that stem. Back up. Let's do this leaf. Up to center. This leaf. Don't get put off if you're not exactly you know, that's not what we're aiming for. And back down to the bottom. Just cut the ends off. Right, so that's that done there. I mean, isn't that just a really, really nice cover for a little journal in your journal? Now the back of it will look like this, or thereabouts. So it's up to you. You can put another bit of paper over there and it'll look all nice and tidy like it never happened. With the front, you can cut it off square with your bit of paper. You can glue it down, or you could sew around it. And let's just, for the sake of argument, sew around this. Now you could go back to your machine as it was set up on Saturday for straight stitching, or you can just keep it.
We're out of sync, so I'm going to restart this stream.
Restart it. Okay.
Yeah. So lend but it'll restart. Hopefully we're back in sync.
Well, hopefully that's got over that technicality. So we're just looking at this cover, which, as I say, you could glue down. You know, do what you want. The world's your lobster. So I'm just going to sew around it, and I'm going to introduce zigzag. So I need to select a zigzag stitch on my machine, but again, it's due to how fast I feed it through is how close together those zigzags are going to be. So just anchor it off like that, and then okay, why are you being awkward? I don't know why that got stuck, maybe on the masking tape. I'm just going to reverse there because I pulled it too hard. And for reversing, when you're doing free motion, you really don't need the reverse button because you know, you can make it go backwards like that. Then when you get to the top, just keep it in place and that will fasten it off. So there we are. And just snip that off. I hope we're in sync. I'm sorry about that, guys. Don't know what that was about. So there we are. There's our little journal to put in our journal. Where are we? Here we are. Easy as you like. As I say, when you get a bit more technical, you can start putting lines in this. I'm going back to a straight stitch now. And we'll just start from the centre. And then just, this is catching on something, so I'm just going to stop that. I don't know what's wrong with it. But if it starts doing that, the best thing to do is stop. You'll hear it. It starts making a funny noise. Is stop and rethread your upper. Rethread this thread. Don't just rethread the needle. If something starts going wrong, rethread your machine. It's not a trauma. It doesn't take very long. I've no idea why it does it. It just does. So just unthread your machine and thread it again. Doesn't take very long at all. There we are. So what oh, I was going to show you that, wasn't I? Let's move on to something more exciting. I'm bored with that now. See what I've got down here in my goodies. All right, this is quite interesting. This is just a sheet of copy paper. Actually, it's quite thick copy paper. And this is a napkin. It's this, actually, this napkin that I have decoupaged onto here, and I have no idea if I can sew on it. Not a clue. I would guess I probably can, but I thought it would be an interesting experiment. So let's give that a go. So I don't really want to stay exactly on the lines. So when I come up to this, I'm just going to go around it, and I know it's a tulip, so it's got sort of petals in it like that, and then down the stem again. Now I'm going to just scoot across here. Just do one more and then we'll have a look at it and see if it's worked. Right, let's have a look at that, see what we've got. Where are we? Here. So there we are. Yeah, it works. It looks like that on the back. Paper isn't perforated. You know, that's just rough. It's really rough. You can be as tidy or as untidy as you want. And I would recommend untidy. I think it would look a lot nicer if it was untidy. But there's an experiment for you. That's something that you could do in your junk journal. And I think it would be a really nice addition. Of course, I've used tulips because I love flowers. But you could do butterflies, Peter Rabbit, anything you like. That's just an experiment to show you that it does actually work. You can sew on paper and, you know, looks all right. Looks pretty good, actually. So let's just get a piece of, I'll use white fabric, actually. I'll just put my Tombows away. And I'm just going to have a look at painting on fabric and then embroidering on it. So this fabric, although it's all white, it has got a self-coloured pattern on it. So it's got white flowers on the white background, which will show up when I paint on it. So I'll just use, thanks. I've got so many things on my desk today. I'll just use, what shall I use? I'll just use red. Red's good enough. It's a nice poppy colour. I'll just mix myself some up here on this little palette. Lots of water with it because we want it to sort of bleed. Well, I do. I want it to leach out. So I'm just going to draw flowers Again, it could be anything. And I want it to bleed out if it will. So you've got the roughest of rough shaped flowers here. But hopefully we can make them look pretty by embroidering on them. I'm adding loads of water to this because I want it to leach out if it will. Don't seem to want to do it, but just add water to them. I do want to sew this, so I don't want it to be sopping wet. Right, okay, so let's put some green. Bit of green coming down here. Okay, that's probably sufficient for that experiment. Put that away. Right, I could do with something behind that really, just to give it a bit of substance. So I'm just going to use this bit of paper. Yeah, that's what I'll use. This is brilliant stuff. If you haven't done machine embroidery before, 10 to 1 on you haven't actually come across this. Let me just wipe my paint out and I can shut that. Oh, I've got some nice red on there. Let's just use that to give the idea there might be some flowers in the background. And some green. I'm not going to get any more out of that, I don't think. That's just an ordinary cheap little set of watercolours. Right, I was talking to you about this. This is called Stabiliser. It comes in loads of different formats. It comes in this, which is non-tear. You can't tear it, you've got to cut it. And for our purposes, that's perfect. That's kind of exactly what we want. We want it to not perforate while we're sewing with it. So I'm just going to cut a bit off here. You can get tear away as well, which when you've sewn it, it will tear right up to the edge of your stitches. The people who've got big machines that do the, you know, the machine embroidery that you buy the pattern, you put it in and you sew it out. That's kind of what they use, the tear away around the thing, around their embroidery. But that's it's a whole different ball game to this. This is much more you doing your own thing. So I've got this and I've got my stabiliser. Let's have a go and see what we can make out of this. Maybe nothing, maybe something. This is what I say about, you know, it being more arty. But you probably don't have to be that artistic, to be fair. Go around those again. So you notice the speed that I'm going at and the speed that I'm moving the fabric at. That is about perfect, to be honest. Oops, gone a bit wonky. You kind of want the whole thing to look a bit wonky, a bit abstract, or at least I do. So I'll go around there and let's have a look. Yeah, that's nice. Where are we? There we are. It's nice. It would be lovely on a journal cover. Really lovely. So let's just do the stem so you get the whole picture. Right, I know I keep doing flowers. I keep doing flowers because I love flowers. But you know, you've got your own imaginations, I know, and your own pet things that you like. So do what you want to do. And you'll see this really, you know, doesn't tear away. It's not perforated, so it's going to always give support. And, if, you know, I think if you back that onto something, a piece of upholstery fabric even would be nice for a journal cover, or a piece of that thick wadding that I showed you, you know, whatever. You might want to just include it in your journal as something nice to look at. Just chop that end off before it gets caught up in proceedings. It's much nicer, I think, if you go around twice. You get a more wobbly sort of look to it. And try and avoid the first row when you go around for the second row. So I'm guiding the fabric. That's the important thing to know, that it's me, I'm guiding the fabric. So there we are. So in the end, the paint did bleed out, which is nice. And we've just invented these two flower shapes to go on it. But we've got this lovely sort of bled out background. Which I like. Okay, so another thing that we can do, and I have got a sample of this, is you can just cut out some rectangles or squares or circles or any shape that takes your fancy. I'll use that. What you can do if you feel a bit nervous about holding this down and embroidering and everything else, you can get a thing called Bondaweb. There are other proprietary names for it, but Bondaweb. And you just iron it to the back, you put it down and you iron it on and it stays there. It's stuck there. So you're not having to worry about it moving as well as everything else. Let's just see if I can find another piece of fabric here. Oh yeah, I came across these. I'm not even sure what they are, but they're pretty nice. I can't imagine why I would have bought them, but I did. I'm not sure if that's just one piece, maybe. So I'm just going to cut a piece out of there as well. Put that on there. I'll move this down a little bit. Where's my stabilizer? It's there. Just move that to there. And then you can do pretty much anything you like on that. I've got black thread in. Well, I'd say simply so you can see it, but I do like doing this in black thread. Make sure you drop your foot. It's very easy to forget. Just going to cut that off because it's going to get tangled up. Don't forget, you are in charge. You are moving it, and you are in charge of the speed. So there we are. I mean, it's nothing. It's just a pattern. It's just to show you that you can put loose bits of fabric on and sew them down. You can then go around the outside if you want to with a zigzag stitch or a straight stitch if you want to. Let's just do that, and then for the sake of completeness. So when I come to here, I don't actually have to turn the fabric. I can just move the fabric that way. Down here. So I'm moving the fabric where I want it to move. I don't have to pivot it or anything like you do when you're straight stitching. I'm a bit wonky there, but I don't really care. So there we are. So that's it's a very, very good tool for applique. I mean, it really is. And this is applique when you're applying one piece of fabric or paper or whatever onto another. It's called applique. I don't really know what else I've got to show you guys. I can have a bit of a run through over what we've done. Oh yeah, I was going to try acetate. I just wondered if you could sew on acetate. I've never ever tried it before, so it's the first. And yeah, it's going to be a flower. Got any questions, please ask. I'll do my level best to answer them. It's just hard trying to remember everything that I wanted to show you, really. Right, let's see if this actually works. Well, yeah, it does. That's amazing. It works on acetate. Move these out behind and you'll see. I mean, that's a brilliant discovery. So now when you're doing your windows for your journal, your window pockets, you can actually embroider on them. Wow, that is a good discovery. Right, so we have discovered then today that you can sew on acetate. We have discovered that you can just make a rough shape and sew around it. This is a little journal for inclusion in a journal. This was using the very fat wadding, which is a bit more difficult, and I'd recommend that you don't use that until you get a bit better, but you can use that wadding in a 1/4 inch thickness, and that's perfect. these were just some abstracty sort of blobby flowers, which we've sewn the shapes in, and the background's doing its own thing. These sort of things I think will look lovely on a journal cover, really nice. This is a bit of applique, 2 shapes sewn down. What else have we done? Not very much there, apparently. Where's our bit of decoupage that we did? Oh, I've just found a pocket down there. Yeah, that was one that I did yesterday, just when I was seeing what I was going to include in the live today. That's the one that I particularly think would make a really nice journal cover if you added some sort of splotchiness to it. I might do that in a minute actually and show you. That was just me writing my name first off. This remains my favourite actually. I really like that. It's just applique with one of those, are they called echinacea or something on them? I like that. And that was just the girl. So let's see if we can turn this into something we'd be proud to say was a journal cover. So I'm just going to get my watercolours out again. And maybe have some blue this time, perhaps. Just make a sort of puddle of the watercolour. You don't need to use your best Daniel Smiths for this. Just plenty water in the mix. Right, okay, let's just put some bluey blobs around. Okay, let's go with that then. I'm just cleaning this out because I haven't got any room to put it and I don't want to get it over everything. So let's just say that we made these into some sort of shape of the flower family. It's just starting to catch again for some reason. I'm not sure whether it sometimes catches on that the masking tape, or it's catching on this jump stitch that's underneath. So either way, I'm just going to cut all my threads off and just start again. Be prepared for this. It's like I say, it's a bit more of an art than a science, really. So don't get frustrated with it. And if you are the sort of person that gets frustrated easily, I'm not sure this is for you, really. I'm just going to go around those once. My ends off. I'm just going to cut that off. So this, I mean, this is, oh, it's got caught on that underneath thread. This is addictive. I mean, like, seriously addictive. I remember watching Kirsty when she was doing it, and she kept saying, oh, it's addictive, and it absolutely is. You just do it, and then you think, oh, what would happen if, and you keep going. And I think because I'm jumping along the back, there's an invisible thread there that it keeps getting caught on. I'll just do these ones and then I'll let you go because we're over the hour. Well, maybe I'll let you go sooner than that because I think I need to rethread my machine. Anyway, there we go. That's that. You can see if it was all finished and you kept adding leaves and flowers, etc., you'd have a darn nice junk journal cover, I would say. So I'm sure I've missed out loads. I'm sure there's things you wanted to know that I haven't even begun to cover. If that's the case, you know, just ask me. Leave a comment. Yeah, yes, definitely. I mean, I've got my faff performance over here, and the tension that I would have that at would be completely different to the tension that I've got this Toyota at. It's trial and error. And actually each bobbin of thread will have its own specific tension and how you feed the thread, whether you feed it from the top of your machine or whether you feed it from a bobbin stand. You've just got to try it and mess around yourself until you get the tension that you want. Anything else? Oh, thank you very much, Paula from Fairy Chic Emporium. That's nice. Right, okay, guys. As I say, any questions, drop them below. I really will try and answer anything that you've got for me. And I think that in future, I'm going to do a little series on feet, machine feet, and what they're used for, how they can be helpful to us in our junk journal. I've got quite a few to go at, as you can see. I got a box full of feet. So it's not going to be every live. It's not even going to be once a week, but periodically we'll pick one or two feet and we'll have a look and see what they do, because some of them do really, really groovy stuff. And I just know that you would find it exciting. So that's it for me for today, guys. I really want to thank you all for joining me. You're amazing. You really are. So stay safe, people, please. And if you haven't already, please can you subscribe? It is the most important thing of all to me, really, that you subscribe and get my numbers up a bit. And that way then more people get to see it. So get trying, keep trying until you can do a girl like this. And then, you know, then you can say you can machine embroider, I think.